I'm going to give you a broad question. It's a very cliche question because you spend a lot of time on poker in this book. Is poker a metaphor for life, or is it a metaphor for something else?
I wouldn't say it's a metaphor for life. I'd say it captures uniquely well certain types of decision making where you're blending analytical skills with people skills, or people reading. People reading and people skills are slightly different things, I think. And I think that's correlated with having a skill set that you need to succeed in business. And, it's good with other things too. I mean, metaphorically, decision making under stress and under uncertainty, I think that helps a lot. If I'm covering some election night in 2020, I am on ABC News live on air, and our model had Joe Biden. This is not 2016 when we had the race fairly close. Yeah. I mean, we had Joe Biden as a 90-10 favorite. And first results come in from Florida and states like that, and it begins to look like 2016 all over again. It turns out that Florida was a little bit of an outlier in that election, and that Biden, of course, wound up winning. But I'm okay, I'm on national TV, and here's this event happening that could be really bad for me reputationally. But you're kind of imagining yourself in some big World Series of Poker event or something where you just you lost a big pot or something happened to damage your stack, but you're still in the tournament and you still have to play your hand the best that you can. And so that kind of simulacrum, or I don't know how you say that word, of risk taking is I think that's quite valuable, right? Especially if you're actually gambling for money that's actually meaningful to you, which sometimes I do, for poker at least. You only get so many reps. I mean, the book also gets to some stuff that's relevant to being in the zone for sports psychology in terms of when we are under stress, our bodies react differently. We actually are triggering very powerful kind of afterburner systems when we're under stress. And your body will know. I talked to a guy named John Coates in the book who wrote a book called The Hour Between Dog and Wolf, which he was a guy who was an academic, went to Wall Street, became a equities derivatives trader or something for Deutsche Bank, I think. And he's like, these people who are traders are really freaking weird, right? They have physically weird reactions to risk, and you can see the amount of testosterone they have, and they're supposed to be hyper rational, but clearly there's something different there. And so what he did is he left Wall Street to study the neurology basically of traders, literally to kind of wire them up and see how the different chemical compounds evolved over the course of a day. So it's fascinating. And what he found is there's actually a lot of overlap between being a trader and athletic performance. That traders actually, like champion athletes, have a high difference between their resting heart rate and their heart rate under stress, but they actually perform better when they're under stress because they find some element of being in the zone where, literally it's kind of what it is, right? You can go into a panic state if you begin to start to have your elevated heart rate and start to have things process a little bit more. You might have time dilation. Things go a little bit more slowly, or for other people more quickly, or you feel like you're maybe on some drugs of some kind, right? It's kind of, some people love that situation. And I found more and more that when I play high stakes poker, I'm starting to have a little bit of a reaction where I feel like I maybe have some mastery of that, and probably objectively your performance has fallen off, but relatively speaking, other people's performance falls off more maybe. That's quite addicting, and I think has direct consequences for people who enjoy other types of stressful situations.
Man, there's so much there. Because I've learned over time in life that you have to acknowledge it's happening. You can't try to silence it. That anxiety, that adrenaline, it will get the better of you. I actually think it's good advice to people who might be on a bad drug trip. I think the worst thing you can do if you're on a bad drug trip is to just try to silence and suppress. I think you actually have to just ride it out and understand that it's happening. And often suffering delivers a positive payload in the other direction, and endorphins. And there's that anxiety at the beginning. I've talked with many athletes who did not perform nervously, but they had those butterflies that I can remember from high school basketball that I really didn't enjoy. But the only way to get through it is to channel, to, as a director might tell an actor, use it. That's all you can do. And I think with reps, people just get better at using it and directing that energy. But it's no, I mean, it's no mystery why people freak out. I mean, it is literally stressful. That's what's happening.
No, and look, if you make it through the ranks of youth sports and high school sports and college sports, the professional levels, I mean, you don't have like too many outright chokers. I mean, I guess now and then you have a Ben Simmons or somebody who has enough talent combined with enough stress management skills where they make the league and then kind of fail repeatedly. But yeah, in sports, you're selecting for that and training for that in things like the military. So most of the book is about quantitative risk takers, but not all. There's a chapter with physical risk takers. So I talked to a former NFL player. I talked to an astronaut. I talked to H.R. McMaster, who's a former whatever star general in the military. Talked to an explorer who trained fighter pilots at the Top Gun Academy. And it's actually remarkably similar, this kind of battling under stress and coolness under pressure and executing the game plan, right? The thing I heard repeatedly was don't try to be a hero. If you can execute the basic X's and O's, blocking and tackling, then A, you're ahead of 95% of people who are freaking out. And B, that opens up mental bandwidth. If you do want to get more creative or more mavericky or whatever else, or try to, be a superhero, but you get the basics down first through practice and repetition and reps. And yeah, I'm a much bigger believer now in clutch performance in sports after studying these poker players and talking to people like John Coates and writing this book. I used to think that stuff was bullshit, and now I think it's probably real.
But it's real in a very counterintuitive way, I believe. And you capture it in the book. I believe you might have been quoting Bill Walsh, how in these pressure situations, it's not that the clutch team or player rises to the occasion. It's that they don't come unraveled. And you hear that in military training, that people reduce to the level of their training. They don't get better. They just fall back on it. And I think that's counterintuitive to people because we're deciding heroes and losers. And so you think, oh my God, it's the moment. I'm really rising up to capture this high leverage moment. But if we are talking about Bill Walsh and we're talking about his teams, that drive against the Bengals that Joe Montana orchestrated, I think, is a fantastic example of this. Because if you watch that famous drive in the Super Bowl, it's not any sort of big throw through the tightest window. It's just little dinks and dunks, just doing your job calmly and not trying to do too much. And in the end, in a pressure situation, that often carries the day when a lot of other people are panicking.
Or, Tom Brady, 28-3 comeback, the Patriots versus the Falcons. It's just executing. They had little margin of error. They had to execute 15 plays in a row correctly, and they execute 15 plays in a row correctly. None of which are that remarkable on their own, but that consistency of execution, having systems in place, having training, is very important.